I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday, and on the penguin I did 40 and 60%, and those were the two values that I was going to use. I'm not even going to bother with 20, you can't even see it, so that would be a waste of time, because my 40 is going to be my foundation for all the values that are darker, that I see as darker than the mid value, which is the paper surface. And I'm treating the penguin, the reference penguin, the same way. So anything that's darker than, say, the mid values in here, I'm doing gray marker starting with 40%. Now I wanted to show you a nice blending trick. If it should be just a little bit darker than 40%, which is my lightest, but not quite as dark as 60%, you can take your 40 and you can take some 60 on it and have the two close together. Make sure you're not putting 40 on 60, because that won't work. So this would be just a little bit darker than my 40%. And you know, after about 2 or 3 strokes it goes back to the 40%. So I don't even know if you can see it. You can probably see that. So I'm going to work on this glass beaker as long as I started it, and I'm going to include this cast shadow behind it. It's really dark on the picture, but I don't want to make it that dark. It's probably almost black, and I'll probably start with 6 and see if that's dark enough, and there's plenty of 6 inside of the glass in different areas. So I'm going to start with a 60 here and here. I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to come back and we'll see how that looks. So I may have found a place to use my 20% marker after all. I want to soften this cast shadow. Cast shadows are usually pretty soft. I want to do that, and this is a 60% right now. So I want to do that by softening the edges. So I'm going to take a little bit of a 2 and a 4 and just go right up against this edge with circular strokes and see if I can blend that in a little bit better. I want a nice soft shadow. I don't want to use black pastel. I don't want to use black pastel for just about anything if I can avoid it. Sometimes I will add a little bit of black pastel to a dark color. Okay, so I'm going to be working on this for a little while. Most of the 2 will just kind of disappear. It looks really dark now, but when it's dried it should be nice and soft. So I did soften the edge. It's probably as good as it's going to get. I'm happy enough with it. I might go back to it and see if I can work on it. I'm also adding a little bit darker value in the shadow. I've got an 8 now because it's a really dark shadow, but I want it really dark right up against the edge of that glass ball and pretty much up against the edge of the penguin. So I'm using circular strokes again, but I want to blend that in because 60 and 80 are pretty distinct. So I'm going to take that 6, take some 8, blend it in. This is all 60% with a 20 and a 40% edge. 2, 4. You know, I might come up a little bit more square now that I look at it. Looks like it's a little bit more square. So I'm going to come up and with the 2 and the 4 create that square. I've got plenty of room because I made this smaller. So I've got the cast shadow of the penguin pretty much where I want it now. I'm not worried about little things like that because the white colored pencil will go over it. I'm going to start working inside of this glass beaker, and I'm going to start with 4, and I already put 4 in, but I'm going to start working with 4 and 6, and I'm going to do a lot of that blending in here. before I get to just using 6 by itself. So there's 6 in the cast shadow. I need to bring 6. I've already brought 6 in here. I need to bring some 6 in here as well. I'll establish a little pattern there. Come back in and soften it later. Not worried about the white. I've got some white, strong white highlights. I'm going to use pastel colored pencil for that. But I do need to save this edge. That's a distorted edge from the back of the rim, and that's the way I see it on my reference. To finish up the penguin with marker, there's not a lot that I have to do, but there's a few areas that definitely call for darker values. One is under the wing here. There's going to be some gradations too, so I've got my 6 handy. For that detail, I'm using the tip. The shadow of his wing on this side is really black, and that would be the shadow inside the body of the chrome. So that's what you're seeing there. You can see that there's a strong difference between the two. I'm going to do a little bit of blending with the 6 and the 8 down here at the bottom. One of the darkest areas of the penguin. And then I can bring in some 8 right on top of that, carefully. And I get the kind of contrast that I need in that area. There's a few little areas here and there that could use a little bit darker, like an 8. But I want to be careful now. I don't want to go too dark. So I'm going to finish that up. There's some areas up here, a little bit in here I'm going to be careful with, maybe a little bit on this edge, or close to the edge. and I'll come back and wrap that up. And now for a little bit of black on the penguin, because that 80% just wasn't quite enough. So I'm going to go right up to the edge on the wing and get a nice contour there. Have a little bit of reflected light inside, and then right up against the edge of this wing with black. And let it fade into the 80% a little bit naturally. Anything that I need to do to really sharpen up edges, things like that, I've also got a black colored pencil that I'm going to use next with the white colored pencil. So that'll be in the next video, and I'll try to combine everything, including the pastel at the very end, into that video. But for now, let's call this marker done. And that took about 4 hours, so I would expect you to take at least that long, maybe a little longer, to get a really nice foundation for the color pencil to come, and also the pastel. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I'll see you tomorrow with some finishing details.